Hi, this is Joel Persinger. I'm the Gun Guy. Thank you very much for all of your support on GunGuyTV. I am very, very grateful for what you do. We're going to have Sam Paredes from Gun Owners of California on the show. He can give us a rundown as to what's happening in California. He may be on here for a while. It's a long rundown. And we'll also talk about what's happening with NRA as far as the city of San Francisco declaring NRA and NRA members, for that matter, terrorists. Sam wants to address that. We'll talk about some other things along those lines. One of the things I want to bring up now is, given what's happened with Walmart and their decision not to sell guns and ammunition and all those kind of things, I think it's time that as gun owners, we start supporting the retailers who support us. So one retailer I want to bring to your attention is Sportsman's Guide. I'm going to grab something here real quick to read to you, because Sportsman's Guide has been supporting GunGuyTV on Patreon for about a year. I mean, they've never asked me for anything at all. They just supported me. I thanked them for it, and they said, oh, no, that's fine. We support what you do. We like your show. We appreciate what you do for the Second Amendment. We want to support you. And they've actually been supporting me, not a fortune, but it's fairly significant on Patreon, and it's helped quite a bit. So I want to let you know that as of September 4th, Sportsman Guide has announced that their Buyers Club members will receive free shipping on orders of $49 plus every day as a new benefit of membership. No coupon needed, no coupon code, none of that kind of stuff. So I want to urge you to check out Sportsman's Guide. They're a great bunch of people over there, and they do a great job, and they might be a place for you to actually get your ammo and that kind of thing. So I would say check them out, certainly because they do support the Second Amendment, and it's really a good idea for us to support people who support us. All right, now let's get on with Sam here. Sam, it's really good to see you. It's good to have you on the show.
It's a pleasure to be here with you, Joel, always.
I have Sam Paredes and my coffee in the same place. All right, so give us an idea. And you got yours too? Okay, wait a minute. Hold up. Compare cups. I think mine's cooler. I'm not sure. What do you got?
I love the smell of rocket fuel in the morning.
I don't know. Yours.
Buddies over at Aerojet.
Yours may be cooler than mine. That's all I got to say. All right, so what's happening in California? I've got my pen out to take notes. Give us the rundown. What do we got?
Well, you're going to need a box of pens, because the ink is probably going to run out of whatever you're using right now.
I was kind of afraid of that.
We are in the last week and 2 days of the legislative session here in Sacramento. The legislature will be out at the end of next week, and all of the laws that are presently being considered have to be dealt with before Friday at midnight, or else they are, you would think they would be dead. Some of them might be, but more accurately, they're zombies in that they can be brought up next year in the second half of the legislative session. Just remember, nothing is really dead in California through the legislative process until the last second of the 2-year session at midnight, when the session ends. Then all legislation that has not been dealt with dies. And as you can imagine, they're going nuts on gun bills. They're with a supermajority. The arch radical anti-gunners are having a field day. We've got bills that deal with precursor parts. It passed out of the Senate floor and is going back to the Assembly for concurrence. This is a bill that will require background checks when you buy parts for firearms that can be assembled into parts, including some parts that could be used for non-firearm things. Springs and pins and all of those things are ultimately going to be included once the Department of Justice declares what it considers to be firearms parts. So 15-day waiting period, 10-day waiting period, a dealer record of sales, all of the identification issues have to be met for every part that you buy, and those parts can only be sold by a licensed part vendor. So it's, when you think about what the legislature is doing, the Department of Justice has to register all firearms transactions, public or private. There is a dealer record of sales record for every transaction. And over the last 4 or 5 years, that's about 1 million transactions per year on an average. Now they are processing ammunition purchases. So now you're looking at least several 100,000, and I would venture to guess that by a full 12-month period, it's going to be 1 million or more transactions that they're going to have to process with background checks. And now every firearm has dozens, some have hundreds of parts, and they're going to have to be processing background checks for all of those parts. I mean, the Department of Justice is going to rival the Department of Motor Vehicles for the amount of information they have to record.
So this gets. I want to make sure I understand the whole parts thing. Mm-hmm. This means if I'm building an AR-15 and I already have a lower and I want to order an upper or whatever, I'm going to have a background check. Does this also apply when my handguns or my rifle, maybe my hunting rifle's firing pin needs to be replaced? Do I need a background check to order a firing pin? Do I need a background check to order a new hammer spring for my revolver? Or is that what we're talking about?
That is going to be exactly what we're talking about once the Department of Justice writes the regulations to implement the legislation, which they are being given the authority by the legislature to do so. Yeah, and if you don't buy a, let's say, an upper kit that's got all of the parts, you're going to have to go through a background check when you buy your fore end, your front sight, your barrel, your forward assist, the opening cover. If you're going to buy a separate Picatinny rail, technically speaking, you're going to have to go through a background check for the purchase of all of those things, unless you buy them in a kit.
And this gets into, we've already had displayed for everyone to see a lot of problems with the ammo background check system. We've had people denied when they shouldn't have been. We've had delays. We've had the system go down. We've had all these things. So not only is it an absolute intrusion upon the rights, Second Amendment rights of Americans to be able to just buy a part for your gun, but also it increases the cost. You got to pay for the background check every time, and it makes it possible that you might not be able to get a part for your firearm, which if it happens to be your only firearm and the one that you use to defend your home, and now your trigger spring or something needs to be replaced in order for it to function, you now have to wait 15 days or 10 days, or they may be denied altogether because somebody else has a similar name to you. I have a gentleman just down the street from me who is still fighting with the Department of Justice because somebody else that has a similar name keeps popping up, and he can't go pick up the gun that he bought, even though he has no criminal background at all. He's a retired truck driver. He's a very nice guy. He's never committed a crime. He's never been arrested or anything, and yet he's still waiting. That's been about 4 or 5 months. Is this what we're looking at when it comes to just buying a part?
Absolutely, Joel. You're getting me all choked up here. I'm sorry, but
well, I apologize. It's just like this is getting to the point where if they can't take the guns away, they want to make them impossible for you to use, or impossible for you to repair, or impossible for you to build.
Absolutely, that is their full intent. They spew these words of understanding and common sense and logic, but their intent is to make it as difficult as possible for law-abiding citizens to exercise their Second Amendment rights and build guns. They say they want to prevent criminals from being able to build these ghost guns out of these parts and stuff like that. But criminals aren't complying with these laws anyway. They're not complying with the law. They're criminals.
Well, law-abiding people, a lot of them won't comply with the law. I mean, a lot of law-abiding people won't comply with the law. Your brother-in-law lives in Nevada, so he buys it and he brings it to you when he drives over or whatever. I mean, a lot of people are going to do that. So what they've done is they've created criminals out of law-abiding people, and they've created a black market in ammunition already, and they're going to create a black market in parts. They just are.
Well, we know that the Department of Justice regularly sends agents out to Nevada and Arizona and Oregon to go to gun shows to follow people who arrive with California driver's licenses, and then they look to see if they buy anything that would be considered contraband in the state of California. Then they call ahead, and you get a visit from a local highway patrol officer who asks you the question, did you purchase any parts or magazines or ammunition in Nevada or Arizona or Oregon? And if you lie, you break the law. But if you tell the truth, you broke the law.
I mean, either way, you're screwed. And I'm not, don't get me wrong, I'm not suggesting that people break the law. You know me, I don't do that. But at the same
Yeah,
time,
I agree.
in reality, we have to face the reality that many people are going to do such things because, and these are people who are not criminals. They're law-abiding Americans. They feel like they have a right to own a firearm, and they're right. They feel like they have a right to buy ammunition, and they're right. They feel like they have a right to be able to acquire parts to build or construct or fix a firearm, and they're right. And California is breaking the constitutional law by creating these laws. And so, Californians say, well, good grief. If my government won't obey the Constitution, why then should I obey these idiotic laws? I'm going to have my brother-in-law, sister-in-law, best friend, or whatever pick up the stuff for me in Texas. And when I see them next, I'll just get it from them. If we sit back as Second Amendment advocates and say to ourselves that isn't happening, I think we're nuts. It's happening, and it's going to happen more. So all these laws that have done, all these things have done is make it difficult for people who don't have that ability to exercise their Second Amendment rights, and push other people who do have that ability to violate the law when they otherwise wouldn't. And criminals they don't care. Criminals are going to do what criminals do. That's why they're called criminals. Anyway, I'm sorry. I went off on a tangent there. I apologize, but
That's okay, Joel. We're only talking about one bill that's making its way through the legislative process. Folks, if you want to find out all of the bills that are being considered by the legislature right now, go to our website at www.gunownersca.com or Google Gun Owners California and get on our website, go to legislation, current legislation, and it'll give you the entire list with a description of the legislation, or letters of opposition or support, very few support letters, and the status of the legislation. Very important. We've got multiple bills having to do with red flag laws that are being considered and pushed through the process right now. And as you and I have talked about before, Joel, the red flag laws or gun violence restraining orders are the single most insincere gun control law that you can come up with, because what it does is it violates somebody's civil rights, their right to due process, takes away their guns, so it violates their Second Amendment rights, and then it doesn't allow them to go before a magistrate for 21 days in order to prove that they are innocent, and they don't get to find out who it is that's charging them with any sort of a potential crime, potential violation of the law, and so it's and this is why even the ACLU opposes these measures. The problem with these red flag laws is that they take people's guns away, they violate their rights, and then that's where it ends. They don't do anything to bring any sort of help to somebody who they say is in a time of crisis. They're a danger to themselves or others. They're saying things they shouldn't be saying. They're acting really weird. They take their guns away, and then they don't do anything. They don't do anything from preventing them from getting other guns or knives or diesel fuel and fertilizer or pressure cookers or whatever it is that they can avail themselves of in order to carry out their visions of crisis and whatever it is that they have to do, these acts of terror. There's no follow-up. There's nothing. We already have laws on the books, and these types of laws have been utilized nationwide without having to use red flag laws to identify people that are in crisis. And the nice thing about these laws is that they get help. They get evaluated to find out if they truly are in crisis. And if they are, they get help, treatment for the crisis that they're in order to get them off of the situation that they're in. These laws do nothing. All they are is a gun control law that can be abused by people who don't like other people. And what these bills that are going through the legislature are doing is it's expanding the number of people who can request a gun violence restraining order. Let's say you work for Google or for Apple or for one of these major employers in the Bay Area that has 30 or 40,000 employees. Every one of those employees, with the agreement from their supervisor, can get a gun violence restraining order against one of their fellow employees. That means that if you're sitting at the lunchroom with, you know, at lunchtime when 20,000 people are going to come in and out, and you're talking about guns, and somebody's ears perk up and they go, oh my gosh, these people are in crisis. And they go to their supervisor and say, I heard Sam Paredes in the lunchroom talking about guns, and I think that he might be, you know, a danger to himself or others. They can get a gun violence restraining order and have the law enforcement folks come to my house dressed up in their SWAT regalia and confiscate my guns, and then tell me you have 21 days before you can go to a court in order to plead your case, and you have no right to know who it is that's accusing you of what.
What does it look like we're actually facing that could become law?
If you go through the list and anything that looks good as something that would be supportive of the Second Amendment, those are all dead. So we've got precursor parts. We've got a bill, AB 893, that will, again, make it illegal for the Del Mar Fairgrounds to allow a gun show to take place there, even though the court said that they can't do it. They can't prevent a legal gun show from taking place on a legally, publicly owned facility. We've got a bill that would make it illegal for you to buy insurance, liability insurance for gun ownership. You know, there's another bill, 1669. This one is a very scary bill, because what it does is it will at least double the cost of processing a firearms purchase or a transfer. It's going to double the cost of the dealer record of sales, and it's going to leave one fee that is actually going to be open for increases ad infinitum. That means it can continue to go up forever until they price you out of buying a gun. AB 1669. That's a very problematic bill. Golly. Of course, we have one gun a month that's making it through the process. We've got storage laws and transfer laws. When people are supposedly suicidal, there's a bill that's supposed to make it easier for somebody to intervene and store those laws. Well, yeah, it's supposed to. We've got storage laws where senior citizen facilities are basically going to have gunsmith talents in order to store firearms that are possessed and owned by their residents. They'll be required to make sure that firing pins are removed, or somehow the actions are not activated, and then they're going to have to be stored in a government required type of a storage facility in order for people to be able to keep their guns in senior citizens' homes. Not exactly a problem that has been out there. There haven't been any rampages of senior citizens using their legally possessed guns in order to commit some sort of a crime. There's another bill that's going to say that if you sell 6 or more guns per year, you're going to be defined as a dealer, and you're going to be required to have a dealer's license in order to do that, according to the state of California. First of all,
what
Joel,
problem does that solve?
Call me first if you have to sell anything, okay? Call me first. I'm your friend too.
Yeah, I will. Okay, I will. But what problem exactly does that possibly solve? It doesn't. It doesn't. I mean, if it's already the law that all transactions have to go through a federal firearms licensee, and a background check has to happen. We have universal background checks in California. In case you're not from California, that's a big argument nationwide. We have that in California. Everything has to, in order to be legal, if you're selling a firearm in the state of California, it has to go through a federal firearms licensee, a licensed dealer in the state of California. And not only in California, they have to have an FFL, but they also have to be licensed as a dealer with the state of California, and they have to go through the background check and the whole deal. Yes. So now California wants to say, by the way, if you sell more guns personally than 6 or 6 or more, you have to be a dealer. There's no problem there to be solved. Now, and I think that's the issue with a lot of these laws. They're just piling laws and regulations on top of laws and regulations. There's no problem that's being solved here. They're just making it more challenging.
That is correct. They've already regulated everything you can possibly do with a firearm or ammunition in the state of California is already regulated. There are laws that govern your purchase, the actual acquisition, to use, the disposal. Heck, start regulating your wishes. I desire to buy guns or ammunition, and they're going to try to figure out how to regulate that.
Well, they're already on their way with the red flag laws. I mean, if you so much as say something, you could be joking. You could say something. It doesn't matter. I mean, for that matter, I have a YouTube channel. I'm sure glad my neighbors like me, because they all know that I hunt. They all know that I shoot. One of my neighbors could get weird because they don't like the fact that my dog barked too much, or because they didn't like the fact that my truck happens to be this particular color, or they don't like the fact that I happen to be in a bad mood that morning because I stubbed my toe at 5 o'clock in the morning when I got up, and I opened up the freezer and the frozen hamburger landed on my foot. Now I'm in kind of a grumpy mood that morning as I go out to my car and they say good morning and I go, well, the next thing you know, I got black helicopters swooping around my house and black SUVs from DOJ because there's a gun. Oh, that's a red flag. He has guns and he's in a bad mood. This is getting to the point where it's ridiculous. I guess my question is, first of all, we're at a bit of a disadvantage in a lot of ways in the state of California, but I think just in general, we're in a bit of a disadvantage because in California, we're outnumbered. They've got a supermajority in the House, in the what do they call it, the Senate and the Assembly. We've got Gavin Newsom as governor, who will sign anything, and we have, and so as a result, we're at a disadvantage there. And then that means they can pass laws very quickly, whether they are constitutional or not, and they're going to pass them whether they pass constitutional muster or not, and then we have to fight them in the court system. My question is, how realistic is it for us to be able to fight them in the court system and actually win?
Okay. So this New York case has to do with transportation. The city of New York prevented its residents who legally possessed firearms from transporting them outside of the city. You couldn't take them hunting. You couldn't take them to compete. You couldn't take them to a gun show or to go visit family. The city made it illegal for you to transport the firearms. So the New York State Rifle and Pistol Association sued and said that this was a violation of the Second Amendment and right to keep and bear arms. Well, they lost at the district court. They lost at the appellate court. And then this was appealed to the United States Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court accepted this case. And the anti-gun community went apoplectic. They were having kittens by the dozens because they were disturbed that the Supreme Court accepted this case. Why? Well, they know that the issue that New York had was unconstitutional. That the Supreme Court might take one other step, and that step is rule on the level of scrutiny that judges can have when dealing with Second Amendment cases. So we believe that the Supreme Court will rule that the law regime that New York City had is unconstitutional. As a matter of fact, the city of New York knows that they're going to lose that case because they changed the laws within the city so that they could potentially moot the case before the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court came back and said, you know what, we're not buying this one because, you know, if we don't take the case, we know that you can actually change the laws and put it back to the way it was. So we're going to hear this case anyway. And then the city of New York had the state of New York pass a law that said that the city of New York couldn't change the laws. And they went back to the Supreme Court and asked them, well, you know, the law has changed, so the issue is moot. Supreme Court, you should not hear this case. We, the California Rifle and Pistol Association, Gun Owners Foundation, and several other organizations submitted friend of the court briefs to the United States Supreme Court that had nothing to do with transportation. It had everything to do with reminding the Supreme Court that lower courts, appellate courts, and district courts have been flipping the Supreme Court off, giving them the middle finger, and winking at the states and saying, oh, don't worry, whatever gun control laws you pass, we're going to declare constitutional anyways. We've got that kind of latitude. They have taken the words of Justice Scalia when he said, judges should refrain from using judicial balancing tests when considering Second Amendment cases, that the only thing that should be used is the text, history, and tradition of the words written in the Constitution at the founding by our founding fathers. In other words, what did shall not be infringed mean at the time? So the courts have ignored that. They have totally ignored that. We believe that the Supreme Court is going to have an opportunity, given the judges that are there now, to make a very clear ruling and direct lower courts in requiring them to use only text, history, and tradition of the words, of the meaning of the words at the founding. If they do that, it is going to give us the opportunity to come back and to sue, to overturn all of the anti-gun, anti-constitutional laws that are on the books, not only here in California, but throughout the country. And that is why the anti-gun community is moving heaven and earth to try to get the Supreme Court not to hear this case. They know what is at stake. And why are we even remotely positive? Kavanaugh, when he was a sitting judge on the D.C. Circuit Court in Heller 3, wrote an opinion where he quoted Scalia also saying that text, history, and tradition of the meaning of the words is what should govern how we view Second Amendment cases. We know where Justice Thomas is, we know where Justice Alito is, and Justice Roberts has a perfect record on the Second Amendment so far. So are we encouraged? Absolutely we are. Now, we're not guaranteeing that anything's going to happen, because funny things happen at the Supreme Court, but this is a great opportunity for us to right the ship on Second Amendment issues nationwide, and the other side is going to have no ability to prevent that. So are we excited? Yes, we are. But that means we have to continue to stay engaged. That's
I think that's,
so exciting.
yeah, I think that's one of the things that people, that may be a misnomer, is, and it's an if the Supreme Court does as we hope they will do, which if they actually agree to hear this case, that's the first thing, which they may decide not to do. I mean, that's a possibility. I'm encouraged, and I think they will hear the case for all the reasons you've expressed, but nevertheless, they may not. Mm-hmm. If they do hear the case, then I think there's a very good chance they're going to rule against the city of New York. Right. However, it's also an if they'll go beyond that and talk about what the courts have been doing, lower courts have been doing, and put some restrictions on them. That's an if as well. They may not. Sometimes the Supreme Court rules very narrowly within the scope of whatever the case is, and they may do that. Sometimes they go beyond it and they speak beyond it. We'll have to wait and see. But even if they do all of those things, that does not automatically mean that all gun control laws that violate that decision are gone. What it means is that we get to go back to court and use that as a Supreme Court precedent and say, according to the Supreme Court, this law is unconstitutional, and then relitigate it. Have I got that right?
You get a gold star today, buddy. You got it
right there on my forehead.
Right there. Yeah, you got it exactly right. And that's why we have to stay engaged. That's why we have been fighting so furiously for all of these years, knowing that when the opportunity presents itself for us to right the ship, it's going to take work. It doesn't happen automatically. The Supreme Court is not going to wave its wand and wipe out all of the unconstitutional gun laws that are on the books throughout the country. It's going to give us the opportunity to use the system that our founding fathers established in order to, in this republic, fight to restore our rights as enumerated in the Constitution, and in particular the Bill of Rights. So our job is not even halfway done. We are on a good trajectory, but we got a whole lot of work to do. When we sue to overturn each of these laws, it's going to take hiring the right attorneys, filing the correct cases, and going through the process. And then we're going to be fighting a hostile judiciary the entire way. We're going to be fighting hostile attorney generals throughout the country the entire way. So to get to the point to where our rights are protected, and we're back in in a condition to where we have won won the day. I mean, that hasn't been the case since the founding.
So I'm encouraged by that case. I guess my question to you would be, Sam, I would hate to think that we're hanging our total hopes on that one Supreme Court case. Please tell me that's not what we're doing, that there are other battles we're fighting.
That's not what we're doing.
Thank you so very much. What other stuff are we doing?
We have multiple, on the judicial side, we have multiple lawsuits that are making their way through the process. We have New Jersey State Rifle and Pistol Association versus Grewal, who is the Attorney General of the state of New Jersey. That's another case having to do with concealed carry, open carry, other issues that we've asked the Supreme Court to consider. Multiple cases are making their way through the process. So on the judicial side, we have lots of opportunities to fight to restore the Second Amendment and give the Supreme Court, as Justice Thomas has said, the opportunity to reframe the Second Amendment as a primary right, not a second option. And so there on the judicial side, we've got plenty of opportunities. We are still very actively engaged in the legislative process. Both Gun Owners of America in Washington, D.C., fighting legislation, at times fighting the administration, at times educating the administration so that they don't pursue anti-gun policies that are unconstitutional. We've had some level of success in achieving that, but it's a constant job. Joel, you and I were talking. I spent a lot of time at the state legislature. I've got the legislature on my screen right now as they are considering a lot of these bills on the floor of the Senate and the Assembly, and we will be reporting to people what the progress is on all of these bills and what they can do in order to petition their governor and ask him to veto a lot of this unconstitutional legislative bills that are making it to his desk. So, and then don't forget the elections. Next year is an election year. Yeah. We are going to have a great opportunity to fight in the elective process in order to elect people who are pro Second Amendment here in the state of California, to defend some defenders of the Second Amendment here in the state of California and nationwide. We're going to have a presidential election. We're going to have every congressional seat is going to be up, and 1/3 of the Senate seats are going to be up. So, very, very important election year. There's lots for us to be engaged in. And as you pointed out, Joel, our founding fathers, in their great wisdom, knew that this was a long-term fight, that this was a long-term effort, a long-term idea, that they this experiment of freedom and liberty that they established in the United States of America. That's why they had that argument between the Federalists and the Anti-Federalists, and whether they should even write a Bill of Rights and add it to the Constitution. But the wisdom that won the day said that no, we need to include this Bill of Rights because there will be generations to come that will have forgotten the experience of the shedding of blood and the fight against tyranny, and they will be tempted through government, as government always grows, to forget about the rights of the people and the preservation of this republic. So they have the long-term view. I'll tell you this much: our opponents, they have the long-term view. All of the people who are very actively fighting to strip us of our Second Amendment rights, they know that they are fellow travelers. They are just one pawn in the process that has to be played in order for them to eventually get the goal of having control over American citizens and California citizens to the level that they want. They want to control all aspects of our life: what we eat, what we drink, what we enjoy, where we go, the sizes of our families, what we do with our families. They want to control all of that stuff. And they know that that's a long-term fight. They've accepted that. Prior to 1979 in California, 1989, there were very few, if any, anti-gun laws on the books in the state of California. But that doesn't mean that the anti-gunners weren't working towards achieving gun control. After 1989, when the assault weapons ban was passed, it broke the dam, and they have been able to systematically chip away at our Second Amendment rights to the point here in California where, as I mentioned earlier, they control everything, all aspects of our gun ownership and our gun use and ammunition and all of that stuff. The Supreme Court case will be very important. What do I expect is going to happen? Well, I expect that we're going to start out with California's so-called assault weapon laws, the safe handgun list, a roster of safe handguns, 10-day waiting period, go from may issue to shall issue on concealed weapons permits. That's just where we're going to start. Ammunition registration, all of those things are going to be the places where we're going to initially move the fight forward with the ammunition we need to win, and it means being engaged. You're right, Joel. I mean, we've earned the gray in our beards and the gray in our hair with time and experience, and we've been involved and engaged in this fight for a very long time. We're inviting everybody else who's listening who hasn't been engaged to engage, because what's at stake is the life and liberty of our kids and our grandkids and future generations.
Sam, there is one thing we didn't talk about, and that is the city of San Francisco declaring NRA a terrorist organization. Any comments?
Yes. I'm not surprised. By definition, in declaring the National Rifle Association a terrorist organization, they define all of us who are members, life members like myself and yourself, as members of a terrorist organization, therefore terrorists. I'm almost speechless. All of the jokes that we could make about San Francisco, all of the, not even jokes, the facts. Here is a city that can't control how much poop is in their public streets and sidewalks. They can't control the situation. They can't control their petty crime situation. They can't control criminals who come in and use guns to kill innocent people. They can't control any of that. They have laws that govern all aspects of gun ownership.
It's a joke. And we can laugh at it because the city is a joke. And you're right. Everything they do is a joke. We can look at them and realize how ridiculous that town is and how screwed up they are. And we can look at them and go, okay, anything they do is stupid, foolish, and laughable. And that would be true. Here's where I see that there's a problem. I think if this were to be something that cities start doing, and counties start doing, and states start doing, now we have a couple of things. One, there's a nexus between you're an NRA member, which makes you a terrorist, and there's a red flag law. So one of the things we consider now in whether we come get you or not is, are you a member of a Second Amendment organization? You must be evil, and you have a gun? We have to go deal with that. And the next thing you know, stormtroopers are at your house. Okay, so is that happening? No. So I don't want you to freak out if you're watching this and think that, oh, I got to cancel my NRA membership. Don't do that. Okay. But, you can see kind of where this could go in an extreme sort of way. I mean, the other part is that obviously as part of this, one of the things that the supervisors in whatever they call them, county supervisors or city council or whatever, supervisors in San Francisco said is they wanted to urge companies and organizations and government entities not to do business in any way with the NRA. So this is a way to starve out the NRA. It's the very same thing that we see happening in YouTube, with YouTube saying, oh, you're a gun channel, let me defund you by not monetizing your videos or not paying you for monetizing. Anything we disagree with, we're going to demonize that, and we can't remove you very easily, so we'll just make sure we starve you out. Well, if they start doing that all over the place, that's going to hurt NRA. But that means if they can do it with NRA, then they can do it with somebody else they disagree with. And anybody they disagree
Absolutely.
with, they can now declare a terrorist or declare a, what do we hear from them all the time? You disagree, so you're a racist, a homophobe, a whatever, I forget the other terms.
Bigot.
Bigot,
Yeah.
you're whatever. You're this horrible person because why? Because you disagree. And that's what they've done to NRA. You're a terrorist because you disagree. Well, if we allow that to continue, that kind of government abuse, then that can be done across the board with anyone that the extreme liberal, anti-gun, anti-constitution, anti-rights, anti-American left wants to declare a terrorist or any other kind of group that they disagree with in order to oppress them. That's where this goes if we allow it. So I don't know what to do about San Francisco other than ignore them and realize they're a joke. But if it starts to get any farther than that, we're going to have to step up and take some action in some way.
Joel, the measure is a resolution, so it doesn't carry any sort of legal binding weight within the city. It is just expressing the will and desires of the Board of Supervisors, just like the city of Los Angeles when they said that anybody who contracts with the city has to disclose whether they have a relationship with the National Rifle Association. But you're absolutely right. And the minute that they take it from a resolution to an actual ordinance, is when the
well, I think that's where the rubber meets the road. At that
Absolutely.
point. That's where the rubber
Absolutely.
meets the road. The minute they take it from just expressing an opinion as the supervisors or city council or whatever to trying to add some teeth to it where that's something that's enforceable, that's where, as far as I'm concerned, they're going to find themselves in court. And there's no way, I don't see a way they can win that. I really don't. Sam, you're breaking up really bad at this point. Seems to be the situation with the internet seems to be getting worse. So I'm going to ask you, is there anything else that we didn't cover that you think you'd like to cover?
I think that we've covered the issues of the day. Walmart, massive disappointment that they would cave to the anti-gun community, and to the point to where they are requesting that the federal government consider laws that would affect our Second Amendment rights. We hope that the business transfers to the local mom and pop gun stores and even the larger size gun stores, all of the business from the number one retailer of firearms and ammunition, Walmart. They're taking themselves out of the fight. Fine. We don't have to shop there if we don't want to. That's totally up to us. And I'm going to change my ways. Walmart used to be one of my favorite places to go. It ain't no more. So that's not where I'm heading to conduct my purchases.
No, I'm right there with you. If there's money, if I could buy the same thing someplace else that supports my rights, I'm buying it somewhere else. I'm not going to buy it at Wally World anymore.
Even if I'm paying more for it.
Yeah,
even if I'm paying more for it, I'm willing to do that. Legislation. Go to the gun owners website to find out what's happening to all of these bills. They're all going to be resolved between now and the end of next week. And then the governor has 30 days from the time they're dealt with by the legislature to either sign or veto those laws, allow them to become law without his signature by just ignoring them. So that's what's in front of us in the legislative process. Pay attention to what's happening in the Supreme Court in the next couple of months. Hopefully we'll be hearing big news on what's happening there. Stay tuned on Gun Owners a website to find out what's happening with the lawsuit on ammunition. Ammunition laws here in the state of California, crazy. CCW issues. And I do want to address the one issue that we discussed on CCW.
Oh, yes, please do. I forgot about that.
Law enforcement is allowed to accept 20% of the cost of the CCW ahead of time. They're not authorized by law to require the payment of the entire CCW prior to them letting somebody know that they have received it. So any law enforcement agency that is charging the full amount, a process of CCW, that's in violation of the law. The law only allows them to accept 20% up front.
What about the course? Can they require you to complete the course ahead of time, or do they have to wait until after they've decided?
No, they cannot. No, they cannot. They have to tell you that you have been accepted, that your CCW has been approved before they can require you the class. So,
all right. So this fella that sent me the email, which I hope he doesn't mind, I forwarded to you, and now I cannot find it, and I apologize, but it's in here somewhere. Is a nice young man, and he contacted me, and I urged him to go apply, and he did.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, wait a minute. I think I found it here. So forgive me for thumbing through my phone here. I apologize. He is applying. He said just after. Okay, wait a minute. Hold on. Went to the sheriff's website and started his CCW process. He says, before I even finished part 1 of the process, it requested me to upload proof of my 8-hour CCW training course and informed me that I was going to be charged $130. So this is in Santa Barbara. So apparently in Santa Barbara, they are demanding that the 8-hour CCW course be done ahead of time. And they're charging $130 up front, and I don't know if that is equal to 20% or above it, but certainly the requirement that the CCW course be done ahead of time is onerous, and it sounds like it is not legal. I know in the state, in county of San Diego, Orange County, and so on, I've taught the courses for those counties for a while. I don't teach Orange County anymore, teach San Diego. They are very strict about, they don't require you to take the course until after your permit application has been approved, and they know they will issue you the permit if you complete the course. Likewise, as far as I know, they don't charge you for the application when you submit it. They charge you at some point when they've looked at the application and determined that provisionally, if you pass a background check and some other things, then they would approve you. Then at that point, they charge you for your background checks and charge you for your permit and all that kind of stuff. So it sounds like the Santa Barbara County Sheriff is upside down here. And somebody somewhere along the line, like Gun Owners of California, needs to have a little contact with the county sheriff and straighten him out. So there you go.
Yes,
Go
California
ye.
Gun Laws, a guide to state and federal firearms regulations. These are all the gun laws that we have in the books in California that can affect you. According to Penal Code Section 26190, B, C, E, and F, it guidelines as to what a sheriff or a chief of police can do with regards to how much they can charge. Your listener, your writer, can look up the penal code and inform the sheriff directly, and we will be doing the same to inform him that he's in violation of the law by requiring all of these fees ahead of time. There was a big
even the sheriff has to straighten up and fly right. He can't break the laws, right?
That's correct. That's correct. Right.
All right. Well, thank you so very much. Oh, is there anything else you wanted to address before we go?
No, Joel. The for us to talk about here in the near future, we're going to wait to see what Judge Roger Benitez, the judge from Freedom Week regarding magazines. He's the one who is considering a request made by all of us, and is considering the case of Rody versus Becerra on ammunition, challenging California's ammunition laws, and whether they were passed by initiative or passed by the legislature. You know what? The people cannot give away their rights.
Doesn't matter, right? We can't vote ourselves out of our rights. It doesn't work that way.
That's correct.
Yeah, no, it doesn't work
correct.
That way.
So the judge is considering a request that we have asked to stay the ammunition laws, thereby lifting them. So the trial is actually held as to the constitutionality of the law itself. If that happens, we're going to be free of all of these ammunition regulations and registrations and all of that stuff. We will be able to bring, hopefully, ammunition from other states. We'll be able to mail order it. We'll be able to. It'll be back to normal the way it has been since.
Do you have a feeling for when Judge Benitez might be ruling on that?
I would guess that it's going to be a couple of weeks.
So it's this year. So we're talking about within the next month or so. Okay, so because some of this stuff stretches out
less than a month.
Until I'm 90 years old, right?
I'm assuming uneducated, semi-wild guess is
also known as a swag.
Than later.
But anyway, we'll get into what that's defined as. All right. Well, thank you so very much, Sam, for coming on the show again. Please say hi to Lori for me and have a wonderful week. I
will.
appreciate so much the fact that you keep us up to date on this stuff, and then we'll have you back on as soon as you feel it's necessary. Just let me know. I don't, just any time you feel like you need to come on the show and give us an update, please do that, and then we'll make time to do this. Okay.
That's a promise. Remember, everybody, stay armed and informed.
Amen. All right, sir. Well, thank you very much for watching. I know we went way long here, and it's been a long show. If you're still with us, I really do appreciate you taking the time to do that and suffering through the issues we had with the internet. And I know that wasn't exactly easy to do, but the information is super important. We'll see if we can figure out what the internet problem is so that it doesn't come back again. And in the meantime, hopefully Sam will have great news for us the next time we get together. So again, thank you. I appreciate your support, and I appreciate all that you do. Have a great week. Wherever you go, whatever you do, please be safe.